There's no training for finance, not at schools, not at home. As a financial advisor in front of groups, I would say there's two things I know most spouses never talk about: money and sex. I'm here to help you with one of those.
Welcome, everybody, to the Warrior Podcast. I'm Frank Dardino, your host. Today, we have a special guest, Bill Haase. He is a former floor broker. He's got some good floor stories. He is the author of a book called Our Mindset on Money. Super interesting. We're going to talk about that. He also owns a business called Money Mindset Media. He's had an interesting ride. We're going to tear him up today and have him tell his story. So with that, welcome, Mr. Bill.
Hey, thanks for having me, Frank. Appreciate it.
Awesome. So how did we come together? Did you watch one of the podcasts or?
You know, I think I saw you on one of the social medias and you're doing podcasts and it resonated with me, obviously. You're from the old days, bringing back the memories of the trading pit days, and those are our glory days.
Yeah, and I want to try to keep it alive a little bit.
Yeah.
For the people who are down there, they love hearing the stories.
I love hearing them.
And then just the insanity. We're dealing in super high pressure. I'll tell you a quick.
I call it controlled chaos.
Yeah, I'll tell you a quick funny story. Did you know Kevin Milken?
Yeah.
So I was a phone clerk, and I was like, still a deer in the headlights. And he walked by me one time, and he said, "Air traffic controllers are only dealing with lies. We're dealing with money here." So we get into the craziest stuff. All right, we'll get to the floor story. So take me back, roll back the tape as far as you want to go. When you're a kid. Tell me a little bit about your parents and siblings and stuff.
As I mentioned in our conversation, I've moved a lot. When I was young, my father was a salesman in the chemical industry, raw chemicals, and so he was chasing the almighty dollar, going after better money and a better lifestyle, and we moved a lot. So we left a sister back in New Jersey. I left one in Illinois. I got left in Wisconsin as they moved around. And, when I was in Wisconsin, I went up at Whitewater, University of Wisconsin, Whitewater, for about a year and a half, and I just said, this just isn't for me. I'm not a college kid. I'm not a student. I was an athlete. I played semi-pro soccer for about 4 years. I started my senior year of high school out of Milwaukee, Croatian Eagles, and I thought that might be a good path for me. And then I realized that, I was a little too slow to go beyond that level.
You mean slow, like running speed slow?
Running speed slow. I was a great ball handler, but I didn't have the speed you needed to get above the level I was at. Once I realized that, I tried out for the Chicago Sting and got cut the first day. So it was pretty obvious. And I only tried out because they had to have local people on the bench. It would draw people in for tickets and things like that. So that was what I was shooting for, not necessarily to be the star on the team, but I thought, well, there might be a crack in here in the opening for me, but wasn't to be, and had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I was bartending and doing cooking, chef and stuff, and I just said, you know what, I got to get back to Chicago. Wisconsin just wasn't the right place for me, so I moved back to the city, and my brother-in-law was a trader at the Merc, and I met another friend of mine who was going to get interviewed at Goldberg Securities. Mm-hmm. And he said, why don't you come along? And I said, okay. My brother-in-law was a clearing under Goldberg.
What was their number for our floor people? 3-2 something?
Yeah, boy, you're pushing that one.
Yeah, I don't. In my brain, my out-trade brain, it was 3-2 something.
370 was Smith Barney.
Right. Whatever. Well, if you remember it.
Yeah. As I'm sitting there, as my friend's getting interviewed by the floor manager of the SIBO, the Options Exchange, he turned and looked at me and he said, "You want a job?" And I'm like, I can handle that. And he goes, "You have a problem with people spitting and swearing and screaming in your face and yada, yada, yada?" I go, "That's fine. Not a big deal." And he's like, 1 out of 10 of you are going to last a month and yada, yada. And lo and behold, they lasted almost 20 years down there. Not at the Options Exchange. I was there about a year and a half. Then I got called to the ivory tower and got involved in risk arbitrage.
All right, so I'm going to pause you right there. this is a complete side street here, but the spitting and the screaming and yelling, I would argue that our immune systems are some of the most infallible immune systems, because literally when it got busy, we were getting spit in our eyes, right? By some of the most vile people, right?
Well, if you spend at least a year down there, you almost become immune to everything. We're type AAA. We don't get sick. You can't.
Right.
That's just not an option. You don't miss a day. You don't miss unemployment Fridays, right? When we were in the interest rate futures over the Merc, they said there's only two reasons you could ever miss an unemployment Friday, and that is a birth of your child or you die. That's it.
Yeah. So I have to tell you a couple of funny stories. This is for the people at home. You don't know, it's such a ball busting environment and it's so competitive. It is like a jungle.
Yeah.
And I remember I had to have a cyst removed, and, it was pretty major surgery, and they bandaged up my whole head, and they said, take 2 weeks off from work. Well, as soon as the bandage came off, I went to work, and I was swollen right here. And, everybody's looking at you and they're asking you questions. And, guys are drawing pictures, cartoon pictures of me, like this. It's like just no mercy, right?
That doesn't surprise me.
And then to your unemployment, never miss going into an unemployment number was Thursday, and there was a big snowstorm predicted overnight. And I told my crew, I go, there's no excuse to be late. If you got to leave 2 hours early, 3 hours early, I don't care. I live furthest away. I will be here on time. No excuses. Well, one of my guys, he didn't make it on time. So unemployment happens, and we're all pissed off because, you're a 5-man team. You're 1 man short on unemployment. We're drowning. So he gets there a couple hours later, and we're giving him, the third degree. He goes, "Can I tell you what happened?" It's like, yeah. He's like, I went to back out of my garage, and, the driveway's big snow piles and stuff, and I got stuck. So I pulled into the garage, hit the 4-wheel drive, and I gunned it, and my rear end went up on top of a snow pile. And we're like, yeah, so what? He goes, "It was my girlfriend's car." So he was halfway. I go, okay, we'll let you slide on that one. So, all right, back to your story, the side street. So, take us through the floor stuff. When you first got on the floor, you were doing what?
I was a runner at the options exchange, so running option orders from a desk into the pits, picking them up. Eventually, I got involved in doing stock orders. Right, all the traders that were doing options in the pit would buy or sell stock to spread out their risk.
And you're making minimum wage doing that, right?
I was making almost nothing. It was nothing, but it didn't matter. I fell in love with it right away. You couldn't get enough. But you're blind. You're a babe in the woods. You have no idea what's going on. I made some good friends. I got to know a lot of people. But like I said, it was only about a year and a half in, and I got called to the ivory tower to get involved in the risk arbitrage office, which was an interesting concept at the time. Nowadays we use algorithms all the time, but back in the mid '80s, in 86, 87, there were very few people around the world doing risk arb, and we had 2 companies. And there was a very good reason for that. It was because if we were one company, we were the largest ARB group in the world, which put a bullseye on our back. Feds were going to watch very closely because of the way you had to trade. Doing risk arbitrage was using computers to buy or sell baskets of stock, and then you would do futures against that. So you would make the difference in the spread minus your cost. So in other words, we would do the 500 stocks and we would do the S&P futures. So we push a button, sell $15 million baskets of stock, and as it came back to us, we would then buy the futures. But you couldn't buy all the futures right away. It had to be on a ratio basis because we're shorting stock, so it doesn't necessarily sell right away. Shorting had to be sold on an uptick. So it could take a long time before that full basket was sold, and you bought all your futures. So there were tactics.
So for the layman out there, so they understand, when you're spreading, you're buying or selling something, and you're buying the counterpart to make the little there could be a little gap of profit in there, right?
Right.
So you're trying to capitalize on that little bit of profit. So the system is very important, how you do that.
Right. And there's a little catch to that. Now you hold a position, right? And both sides, the side you bought, the side you sold, you're holding positions. So you have to be able to get out of those at a profit as well. Ideally. And I mentioned we were selling $15 million baskets of stock. So we talk about that beautiful October 19th day. Well, the market was down a little over 500 points, and still to this day, the biggest drop in the history of the market, percentage-wise.
Right.
That was after that. I was asked to go to lunch with Prudential Beige, and ceremonial lunch because I was signing a $100 million stock loan contract because we had to borrow all the stock to cover our shorts, and that I'm in my mid-20s, and I'm just like I'm ready to pee my pants. I'm just like, I'm getting set up here because I'm working for the people who have a ton of money. And $100 million is nothing to some of the people I'm working for. Dave Goldberg and such. So I was freaking out a little bit.
So let me pause you real quick. So you were a runner for a year and such, and then you said you got called to the Ivory Tower. So had you done any other job before, after being a runner, before taking the next position?
No, nothing. I
Okay.
just went straight from the floor up to
and
the
then so
offices.
they bring you up, and now they're putting you in it like a phone clerk type capacity right away, or what happened there?
What I wound up doing was I wound up managing the positions. We had probably 9 futures accounts, and we had equal that or more of the stock accounts. So we had to manage the different accounts and where the stocks were, and make sure we were covered on the shorts, by borrowing stock to cover the shorts until we got out of them, get the stock back, and just making sure that all the numbers were right.
Mm.
So we had a guy doing the computer stuff. We had another guy doing the trading of the futures, and then there would be 3 or 4 of us in the office that, the guy trading the futures was the one watching the numbers, and he would say, "All right, get ready." And so we would all assume a position somewhere in that office where there was a computer. And when he said sell them or buy them, we would do what he was telling us to do, hit the right buttons, hopefully.
Right.
And funny story there. And then he would execute the opposite side, and we'd go back to doing our numbers, crunching and things of that nature, and making sure all the positions were good. But, the computers were constantly being updated and corrected and faster and things of that nature. And the one gentleman doing that. So one day they said, "Get ready, and we're going to sell." And so I go over to my computer, and he says, "All right, sell them." And I hit it, and I hit the buttons, and the screen doesn't do anything. The screen always did something. The screen did nothing for me. So I thought it didn't go. So I'm hitting the buttons again and again and again.
Oh boy!
So now I've sold 4 baskets of the section of stocks that was on that computer. So different computers had different sections.
Mm-hmm.
So I was selling 200 stocks, let's say, each time. And I'm like, all of a sudden I decide I better say something. And I do, and the computer guy comes running over, and he's like, "I just changed the screen." And I'm like, "Thanks for telling me."
Right.
So we had to quickly, figure out what we were doing, what was going on, and how we were going to cover that position. Whether we made money on that or not, I didn't ask.
Did you see the podcast with Scott Cole?
I saw a good portion of it, half of it.
So that happened to him.
Yeah.
Where he, the machine wasn't reacting, and he kept hitting the button, and wind up he got tagged for 7 figures on that. So
Oh yeah.
yeah. So he told a good story. Before we go forward, so you had all these people that you were managing, and because the trading business is so high stress, it brings out kind of the wildness in people. Did you have people working under you that you had to keep an eye on because they were
Well, one in
much,
particular person I had to keep my eye on, and I wound up marrying her. so no, I didn't take my eye off of that one. But no, this was a calm environment. This wasn't like a trading pit environment. This was a quiet office. Everybody was pretty quiet. Yeah, we'd tell jokes and things like that and have conversations, but we had jobs to do. There was a lot of work involved.
Mm.
And there were only about 6 or 7 of us. So we had, and then we had a couple of traders that were in the pit, one on the SIBO, one at the Merc, that we were managing those positions as well. But, and keeping an eye on their trades and whatnot throughout the day. So these guys were in training. And, I was hoping to get to that position, but after, I think I was up there maybe a little over a year. And, I got my first bonus and I'm sitting here going, wait a minute, I know all the numbers. Why is this bonus I'm getting so small? And I think I was making like 35 grand a year.
Going from what? Almost minimum wage, right?
Yeah.
So you ramped up pretty quick.
Yeah. And you do in the business, right?
Right. Mm-hmm.
But you also can go backwards and we'll get there.
Yeah.
But, it just wasn't, I had this drive to get back to the pits.
What year roughly would this be when you got the bonus, roughly?
This was 88.
Okay.
And I just got the itch. I had to go back to the pits. And I fell in love with the girl that's in the office that we were told you can't touch. We have our first woman coming in the office, no more dirty jokes, no more swearing. We got the riot act read to us and the HR and all that stuff. And I wound up marrying the first girl that comes in the door. But, and we're still together.
Awesome.
35 years later.
Awesome.
But, it was interesting times. But again, I really wanted to go back to the floor, and I got upset. And I let it be known I was upset. And one of the partners came to me and took me out on the balcony of the atrium of the Board of Trade there. We're up on the 20th floor. And we're looking, he's like, kid, what do you expect? You got a great opportunity here. I go, look, I know the numbers. I said, and when I'm getting paid, I can make more money selling pencils and balloons on the street corner. And that's what I'm going to go do if I have to. So I quit.
Wow.
And
you didn't have anything lined up yet, did you?
Not really.
Mm-hmm.
Not really, but I had a lot of friends, a lot of contacts. Lo and behold, I wound up getting a tremendous job. At the time, I got hired by Drexel Burnham.
155.
155
right?
at the Chicago Mercantile Exchange.
Is that right? Is that their number?
You're
I think it was, but whatever.
I got a lot of brain cells long gone since those days, but the only one I remember is 530, which was Nikko Securities, and we'll get to that point. I was a manager there. But I wound up getting a job. George Cavaligos hired me in the Eurodollar trading.
Loved him.
Yeah, great guy. He brought me along well. I mean, but the interesting part was I got hired for 10 grand a year. That was where you started. If you made it a month, you'll be bumped up to 20.
Wow.
Third month, 30, 40, 50, 60. I got up to about 60 plus thousand when all of a sudden things fell apart. There's a little guy named Mike Milken that worked for Drexel, and he got in trouble with those junk bonds. And we all just got a notice on a Friday in the fall. It said, by the way, grab all your personal belongings and have a nice life.
Wow.
It was just like, what? We're all out of business in one day. Now, we were all back at the floor on Monday.
Right.
Because Drexel Burnham was a unique organization. We had every Fortune 500 CEO banging down our doors, begging us to take them for clients. It was unbelievable. You talk about BSDs in the pit, and I don't know if we can say big swinging dicks on there, but
of course,
cut it out. But Drexel Burnham was a big.
Can you just tell the audience real quick what happened with Michael Milken, just so they might not know?
So we all got a bonus, and to leave, and mine was like 30 grand, and Michael Milken got 650 million. He went to jail with $650 million bonus for just the 1 year.
Wow.
Now the feds came after us for several years. They wanted my bonus back, and I said, "You got to be kidding me! You're wasting your time because that money's long gone,
right?
And this guy over here has 650 million,
right?
My 30 grand isn't going to put a dent in anything." And they eventually gave up.
And what did he do, Michael Milken? I remember vaguely, but it was world news. I know that
he was known as the junk bond king. So he's the one who put all kinds of packages together for junk bonds that sold to banks and other types of investors and such. And junk bonds were what you would expect junk bonds to be. They were high risk, high return, most likely to fail. or fall apart and or not get paid. And they finally just kind of fell apart. The whole scheme that it wasn't a scheme. It was the whole thing that he had put together. It fell apart, and a lot of people lost a lot of money. And when you piss people off in that category, you
understood.
You get in trouble.
Yeah.
You don't want to piss off those powers.
Moving on. Now you're out of a job.
Yes, we're out of a job again, but
let me pause you here. So this is approximately when?
This is the fall of '89.
Fall of '89. And where are you with your girl at this time? Are you together, engaged, dating?
We're engaged. We were married in '90.
Okay.
So most likely we were engaged by that time. I'm pretty sure we were, honey.
And then how did she take it when you went out of business? Was she scared or not really?
I don't recall how she felt about it. I mean, I could tell you about all the other times.
The only reason I ask is because I work for Discount and they went out of business.
Yeah.
And I was doing okay. I was a broker already. And my wife, she wasn't worried. She goes, I know you'll be fine. So I just curious.
Well, I had a $30,000 bonus, and back in '89, that was some good money.
Right.
I mean, it wasn't the kind of money a lot of people were used to from
Sure.
that world. But for me, it was pretty good money. And so I had a cushion. Really, I had no concern about finding another job. I knew I wanted to be on the floor. And like I said, most of us were back working the following Monday. I mean, we got let go on Friday. Maybe it was a week from Monday, but we were all back on the floor, wound up going with Smith Barney.
Isn't it amazing assimilation on the trading floor, right? It's like that's happened many times. Groups disbanded or companies went out of business, and the system absorbs everybody almost immediately. Isn't it something?
It is, because you can't find people who can step into that world and go from that second.
Right. True.
It takes years. It can take years. I mean, I didn't know hand signals when I started with Drexel Burnham. I had to learn hand signals before I could even pick up a phone, and start executing orders and such. And you have to learn fast, or you're out. There are nobody's there really to help you along. They're there to see if you're going to make it.
Right.
And I mean, it gets to a point where even your own partners might be stealing from your back.
I know about that too. Yeah.
Yeah. So, that's why we didn't take vacations. Very rare. We were back on the floor in a week or so. There were a small group of us. If you remember Art Nolan, another great guy. He was at Smith Barney, and I went to Smith Barney with him and a couple other ex-Drexel guys from the S&Ps and such. And, we made a home there for a little while.
What did you do at Smith Barney?
I was a phone broker. So just talking.
You were at a desk on the floor?
At a desk on the floor in the Eurodollars. And for those of you who understand, Eurodollars is the world's largest trading pit of about 1,500 people. So it's not your average pit you're used to seeing at the New York Stock Exchange where there's maybe 10 people standing around a bunch of screens. There's 1,500 people jumping up and down, screaming and hollering.
So you started in the Euros on the floor roughly at the tail end of the 80s, correct?
Yes, correct.
I was in there. I was a phone clerk. And remember, everybody was trying to fight for a spot in the pit and how the bodies were just so damn packed in there.
Yeah.
And remember, the waves of bodies during numbers, they'd pop out of the pit or pop into the pit. It was an all-day thing when it was busy. I remember being a pit clerk, and to get into the pit as a pit clerk, you had to bench press the guy in front of you to make a hole, and then the guy would scoot in under your arms, and then boom.
Oh, you crawl under legs. You would whatever it took.
It was crazy.
Absolutely. I mean, it was, and the floor would be bouncing up and down.
Yeah.
And nobody cared.
Yep.
We didn't care if that floor fell right out from underneath us. Nobody was stopping. But it took years to understand how to move, speak, communicate, see what was going on in that world. I once got my brother-in-law a job down there in the pits. He worked in the options pit. And I said, you have to give me a year. So if I get you a job, I need you to stay for a year because it'll take you that long before you even start to figure out what's going on. And he gave it a year, and then he said, this is not my world. And I get it. I mean, it's not everybody's world. It's very few people's world. But over time, the things you learn, the relationships you have are tight, man. It's we'd fight tooth and nail all day long, and that bell would go off, and you say, "Hey, where are we going for dinner?
Yeah.
Or are we golfing today, or are we going jet skiing?"
It was such a competitive environment, and you had to be very aware and almost distrusting of everyone. So when you found them golden nuggets, man, you were really tight. Those good people that were for you,
and you were tested all the time, right? The big guys screaming, hollering, yelling, jump up and down at you, and everything else. And how you reacted was very, very important.
Mm-hmm.
If you stood up to them, they respected you. They might not like you, but they'll respect you. And if you didn't stand up to them, you probably weren't going to last long.
Right. You needed thick skin.
Yeah,
you definitely needed thick skin on the floor.
Ooh.
And I learned that right away, because people will pick out parts of you that they can make fun of, like physically.
Oh, yeah.
The clothes you're wearing or whatever. And I was the type of guy that, you talking to me, you know what I'm saying? And I learned right away, I'm going to be in a fight every day here if I don't figure this out, so.
Absolutely.
You got to laugh at yourself.
You do, but you develop bonds, with the people that you're doing business with. For us phone jockeys, we were feeding business into the pits to certain brokers. They're making a lot of money from us.
May I ask you which side of the pit were you on? Who would be your lead front month broker?
Lamphere. Don Lamphere.
Okay, so you were on the opposite side of the pit when I was in the pit then. So you were on the side with Dean Witter, Bear Stearns, those guys were on that side, right?
Yeah. I've been on both sides of the pit, but the majority of the side was the Don Lamphere side.
So do you remember who your main brokers would be? Don Lamphere would be a front month?
He would be the front month. The second month, honestly, Neil Pagano.
Yep.
God bless his soul.
Yep.
Third and fourth month, boy.
Don't remember?
And then back months,
The only guys I remember on that side in the third and fourth would be Mike Walsh, Vince Sadler.
Mike Walsh did some business with him, and
great guy, by the way.
Yeah, there were a ton of great guys.
Yeah,
there were some assholes. There were some guys you just didn't want to be associated with.
And they're still assholes.
Oh yeah. Well, money makes you more what you are, right? So, but there were a lot of good people. You didn't always see that side of them. There were times you had discrepancies, out trades, things of that nature, where things would get heated, but you'd get over it pretty quickly.
Let me stop on what you just said. You said money makes you more of what you are. And I've battled with this in my own brain because to me, money's the ultimate corrupter. Mm-hmm. And that being said, can people actually be good-hearted, good-natured people who are benevolent, and then that money changes them? Or is it they were always had that back program running and the money just brought it out?
Well, I know we're going to talk about my book later on because it's about money and our mindset on money.
Okay.
So I've done a lot of research in this area, and I truly feel, and you'll notice it in people, that if they're nice people when they don't have a lot of money, they're most likely going to be really pretty nice people when they do make a lot of money. That's your character, right? That's inbred in you, and you've already grown up that way. So do people change colors? Yeah, absolutely. If all of a sudden you go in the pit and you make $1 million, it's going to change you. It will change you. You know it. We've seen it. We've seen people go in there with mom and dad's $50K and 30 days later come out broke. We've seen everything in between.
Yeah, I've seen many times a young man come on the floor. Young guy, starry-eyed looking, doesn't know what the hell's going on. Mm-hmm. They're trade checking and running cards, and then they're a pit clerk, and then they're a broker, and then they're a trader, and they become huge, right? And they did forget where they came from.
Yeah.
And I don't know, like I said, if that's the back program of their nature or the money did torque them into something else. You know what I mean?
Yeah. I mean, a great example for me is Don Lamphere. I mean, here was a guy, he and his brothers, and they made a lot of money, but they were always the nicest people.
I always thought he was a spectacular broker.
Yeah.
So,
he's very talented. They all were, actually. Very smart guys, very talented, super nice.
All right. So I remember Doyle and Don, and then Dean. Was Dean the middle brother, right?
I think Dean was the youngest one.
Because he was in the pit already with Don, and Doyle came later from my memory, but whatever.
That may be. I'm not sure how that all rolled out. But,
I got along good with all those guys.
Yeah, it was hard not to. You just there were a lot of good guys like that in the pit. Yes, were there people I saw that changed? Yeah, absolutely, for the worse. And I worked for them, but like a lot of us phone jockeys, we bounced around for a number of reasons. You might leave where you're at because your clients are moving to a different firm because there was some political upheaval between the ivory towers. They were getting, or maybe I was going to get a better commission if I moved to a different firm, or maybe it was a job that opened up. I wound up, I worked at Bank of America for a little bit, but I had a $35,000 error, like my third week working with them, and it's like shit happens.
Yeah.
But everybody got all upset and they're like, this is going to put you back, years and trying to get, move up in the ranks and everything. And I'm like, well, hell, I'm not sticking around for that. So I put myself out there and I wound up becoming the desk manager for Nikko Securities, which was a rotation of Japanese personnel coming in. And I have to train them and teach them everything from hand signals to markets to communication skills to talking on the phones, every aspect.
Let me ask you with the Nikko, I never did any business for them. And I do remember the Asian people coming in and out, rotating in and out, but who are the regular, non-Asian people working with you there? I'm just trying to recall.
So Bob Iacchino.
Oh my God. I'll pause right there. John Iacchino and I were weightlifting training partners.
John Legentino. Remember John Legentino?
Yes.
Okay, so he was the head of the group of the American side. Bob Iacchino was his brother-in-law. So Bob married John's sister, and I'm pretty sure they're still married to this day, and then out in California, and Bob Iacchino has done some amazing things.
Oh, yeah, I seen him in Jim Urio's podcast.
Yeah.
But John Iacchino, his older brother, was one of my best friends in high school. We all went to the same high school.
Okay.
So
I used to joke, Bob, I used to pop my fists together and be like I'm buffing the Trans Am saying, and I'd call him Bobby Amadego. And he would just laugh. He took it well. He took it very well.
So funny.
But he, I saw him from being a babe in the woods to where he's at today.
Oh, he found his lane, man.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Yeah. Talk about having the gift of gab. That kid can talk about the markets and whatever.
Yeah.
So yeah, it was cool.
Yeah, he was good. But managing that group was a challenge because I was there to protect them as well. And, I had to protect them from the rules and regulations in the floor. And, they'd have problems and it would be hilarious because I had one kid pick up my phone, execute a trade backwards. I'm out almost $700K in 13 seconds on an unemployment Friday. And lo and behold, later on in the day, what happened was I didn't sell on the low because they made the low one tick higher. And it was supposed to be a buy. And so now I've got a client screaming, you owe me $700K. And, I'm sitting here going, I'm out $700K on the other side. So this is $1.4 million swing. And at the end of the day, when they did the settlement was a tick higher than the price. So
the buy or sell wouldn't be executed.
Wouldn't have been executed. So nothing happens except you still pissed off your client.
Right.
It doesn't matter. Your client's thinking he just hit a home run, and all he's hearing all day long is nope. I take the Japanese young man into the camera room, and I said, "Look here, you did this," and he looks at me and goes, "It's not me." I'm like, "You're on the camera, dude. There's 37 cameras here," and he just would look at me and goes, "It's not me." And he finally said, "He goes, we all look alike," and I just cracked up laughing because at this point in time, I still think I'm out $1.4 million. Upwards of that. You run over the garbage can, you throw up, then you
right.
Get a drink of water, strap on your boots, and get back in the game. Yeah, I mean, you had two choices. You could fall apart, pick yourself up, and get back in the game. Fortunately, I found out that day that I was the kind of person who got back in the game.
Yeah, and it's very difficult for people who've never been in this industry to understand that sickness you get when like your financial world can absolutely come to an end in a split second. Everything I have is gone on a mistake, this instead of this, right?
Absolutely, in seconds, and you're going to lose your wife, your family, your home, everything is gone. For me, it was 13 seconds. You talk about a gut punch.
And I know the answer to this, but I'm going to just ask you anyway, because for the people at home, those days where we were just rocking all day long, screaming and yelling and whipping around, you get home, you're fried. Like you get home at 3 o'clock, you're exhausted. You can't think, you can't talk. You just want to go to sleep, right?
First you go out and have a few cocktails to try and calm the nerves and slow down the shaking of the hands. And I'll get to that story later with the computer trading. You talk about wild. But yeah, the trading pits, but you either loved it, or you weren't there. And I think you feel the same way. I miss it to death. I'd kill to still be there. Would I still be alive? I don't know, because it's stress involved, but stress it didn't matter anymore. After number of years, you knew what you were doing. It was controlled chaos. You knew how to handle yourself in a fast market. Because people may not understand, but when markets go into a fast market, they flash up on the screens, fast, all the way around the screens. And these screens are stories tall, right? And they're all around the exchange on the floor. But when the fast sign goes up, it becomes Queen's rules. That means there are no rules. And it is chaos, but it's controlled chaos. You can get things done. You're climbing over people, you're punching, stabbing, kicking, spitting, whatever it takes, but you get it done. And it's crazy how things would get done. Those guys, those brokers in the pits, they had to keep their eye on their decks, right? And they're holding thick decks, and those bids go way, way low and offers go way, way high. How you keep track of that is challenging when you're moving 10, 15, 30 ticks in seconds.
And the reality of it is, and I'm glad our customers didn't know this, many times you are performing beyond your human capability.
Oh, you are.
You're just flashing orders in, and brokers
like training, right?
And you're hoping you got your counts right. You have no idea. You're just gone to the next thing. You know what I mean?
Absolutely. But that's where there was some camaraderie, because, at the end of the day, when we had to bring it all together, it was like, I thought I bought 500. Well, I only got 300. Okay. Let me go back to my client and I'll explain this. And, we're in a fast market, so I can't really hold you to it anyway. But we would negotiate and let each other off the hook, per se. Mm-hmm. Because it didn't do any good to screw anybody there, because you're toast if you do. You mess with somebody else, you make a mistake and you don't own up to it, you're toast. Nobody's going to do business with you or wants your business, because they feel like you're going to screw them. So why would I touch that? Yeah. Why would I take that risk?
All right. So you're at Nikko, and take us further through the story.
So I'm at Nikko, and Nikko decided that they were going to get out of the business. And so I had to move on. I thought this might be a good opportunity to move into the pits where there's more money. Although there were guys on phones that made a ton of money.
Oh, yeah.
I was not one of those. I had a salaried position. I should have taken more advantage of it, developing clientele base, but I didn't. So I wound up going into the pits and working for the spread group of the Dio brothers. And that was an interesting challenge, because I was an older guy. At that time, I'm probably, my late 30s, early 40s or something. And, I'm working with guys that are in their 20s.
When you say Dio is Laudadio brothers, right?
Laudadio brothers.
And they were Mark and
Dave.
Dave, yeah. Those guys, I watched their rise. They were grunts. They came in and did all the basic running and stuff, and they pushed themselves through. So
they did a great, Dave did a lot. I don't think I'll say anything about Mark. Mm-hmm. I think everybody who's in that pit knows about that. But let's say not one of the friendlier people.
Gotcha.
Who made money in became less friendly. But they did well. They had a good group. I think they were the premier spread group. And I was pretty good because I made relationships because now I'm in the pits, right? So I'm facing the phone guys. Well, I know all the phone guys. I used to compete against them. Ralph Culloden over in, I forget where is he, 430. I forget the name of the, was he HSBC?
That was 323, I think.
Oh, 323.
Whatever. I don't know. I forget them all the numbers.
Yeah, he was 323. And Ralph's a good friend to this day. But we would compete trying to get the Far East business. And I'll never forget one day that we would learn on the phones, whoever executed an order anywhere around that pit, the time of the day, the size of the order, the broker went to, we would know who that client was. And we would know their positions if you were good. And this would take years to develop that skill. But so one day, and I'm supposed to be playing golf with Ralph after the round, and we're competing, right? So all of a sudden, he sees me execute a 500 lot order, and he just calls out my name and starts shaking his head. I'm, what are you talking about? What are you talking about? He was just giving me the finger, fuck you, because I know who you got as a client. And I've been trying to get him for a long time. And it was the general over in Singapore. And that was this guy's name. He went by. And yes, I did land him as a client. And yes.
But you were working for Ralph at the time.
No. I was at Nikko Securities, and he's at a different Japanese operation.
Oh, I got you.
So we're competing.
I understand, yes.
So then we go out golfing that afternoon, and he goes, you son of a bitch. He goes, you landed the general. I'm like, I don't know what you're talking about, man.
Yeah.
But he knew from the size of the trade and the time of day.
Right.
That's how he caught it. So that's how fine-tuned you get into what's going on in that society, in that one small world. We would know. But so, I knew when I made the move into the pits, and I'm working for the Dio brothers and the spread group, and I'm on the side of the pits looking up at the phone jockeys now, I know them all, right? So, and I was a pretty nice guy. And I'm not bragging. That's my nature. So I got along with a lot of these guys, and we were doing good business, and I was stealing business right and left from other guys, from the other spread groups. And, things went well, and it evolved. Well, lo and behold, electronic trading comes along, right? Everybody's talking about it, but it hits the pits.
Okay. Before we do that, I just want to say, and tell me if this is true or false. It was my observation, and I was a top step broker, and the spreaders would always, work inside the pits.
Yeah.
That when the Dio brothers came in, there was kind of a spread broker dynasty in there already. I think they call themselves the Euro spreaders with the green coats.
Yes.
John McGuire and
there was
John Newhouse. They were all good guys.
Good guys.
You guys brought a measure of competition in there that hadn't existed before. That's how my eyes were looking at what's happening. Was that true?
No question. The McGuires were very, very good and good people and everything.
Yes.
Did they have the competition? I don't know. John was getting older. Probably not long for being out of it. And I thank him for taking me to Bigfoot up in Lake Geneva or Fontana at his golf club. But, these were young guns coming in and starving and making relationships with the big traders. And, we had a big team. We had 27 people, so including brokers. So, and we were all on a phone, right? That was clipped to our ear with a microphone so we could push a button and put orders in and take orders out and everything. But imagine all day long, 1,500 people screaming around you, but you have a phone with the one piece in your ear that has 27 people. They're putting orders in, taking partial orders out, partial orders back in, information, who's buying, who's selling, what contract, where it's going on, so you could feed that information to the people on the desks. That was very important. That's in part, what made us so strong. And it kind of changed things, I believe, because other groups wound up doing the same thing, and maybe they did it before, and I didn't know that. But did it change the dynamics? No question. We were good.
I want to pay tribute to John McGuire. When I was a runner, it was almost like he was the spread guy to go to.
Yeah.
And you'd hand a piece of paper, not even understanding as a runner, like, the spread. And he would know, I have to go there, and then I have to go there. And he would literally take off running. And that was the most vivid memory I had as a runner, was giving the order to John McGuire. And then he'd look at it, and then all I'd see was his back, because he'd be running. So I think he was one of the pioneers for filling spreads down there.
Oh, I absolutely.
And all of his sons,
and a great guy.
guys.
All of them. All of them were super nice guys.
Absolutely.
Good guys. But they were competition.
Right.
Right. So, super nice guys, but not between 7:20 and 2 o'clock.
Right.
7:20 a.m. and 2 p.m. Then they were bad guys. But, and I'm trying to make a move towards being in the pits. I'm getting older, and I got to make a name for myself. And I was good. I was quick. And I knew people. I had relationships. It was developed well. So it turns out that for some reason, the Laudadio brothers decided that I was the guy to pick when computer trading was going to hit the floor. So I was the very first one to do pit trading and electronic trading side by side at the same time.
Now, would you say you had a little edge because of the beginning when you were doing the stock trading and everything was computerized? Did it give you a little edge?
Maybe it gave me an edge in that I was a little more comfortable with it than somebody else might be. Mm-hmm. But I don't think they knew that at the time.
Gotcha.
So I don't know that made a difference, at least in their minds. Because let me tell you, it's crazy. Because I'm back on a desk. And I'm up in the far corner behind the Euro and stuff, LIBOR up there.
Was that up toward the Euro options, up in that corner?
Yeah.
Okay, so I vaguely remember you seeing you up there. Yeah.
Yeah. Everybody recognized me after the end of that day. I had people coming out of the pit, just the 20, 30-year veterans coming out, just saying, "Unbelievable what happened today and what you did." So I still have the phone with 27 people screaming and hollering in one ear, right? I'm looking into the pits, all the way down the pits, and seeing all the markets and who's doing what. I got people on the sides over here asking me for markets because I'm a spread broker. I was a spread clerk, right? And so they're asking me for markets, and I'm like,
people right by your desk.
Yeah. So they're still asking me to give them quotes, and I've got 6 phones in front of me for locals that want to call in and that aren't there. Maybe they're at lunch or on vacation, whatever. Then in the other ear, I got Dave Laudadio, who has Jeff Cardo screaming in his ear. And if you remember Jeff, he was probably the biggest trader in the pit at the time. I think he was up like 39 million.
What was his badge?
I don't know. His last. I
don't remember that name. I don't know why.
Yeah, Cardo. I don't know what his badge was.
Okay.
I never got to look at his badge because he was always screaming at me. What happened was we were doing a test run. Basically for Cardo. And the guy was trading. I mean, he would tell me to buy or sell markets. And he said, I don't care what the size is. If there's 10,000 there, take it out. And that's a big
that's
deal.
As big as they get.
As big as they get. And he, but he would sit there and he would be talking to Dave, and Dave would go, all right, get ready to sell red Ds. Get ready to sell red Ds. And I'm setting up to sell red Ds. And I go, all right, red SEP, sell them. And I'd have to change it. I'd have a quarter to a half of a second. I got to change it, hit it. And so I developed hot buttons, which are now became illegal immediately after that. But so many times we missed markets, but it didn't matter. You had to have the balls to say, look, I missed the bid. I sold it a half tick lower, because you as a trader, you got to know where you stand, and you can't sit there and say, well, sorry, you don't have time, right? We're in a fast market. You don't have time. Just hit this, hit that, sell this, sell that, buy this, buy that. And that was very common. That one day, I kid you not, I mean, CFTC was sitting behind us, SEC. My hands are shaking at the end of the day. I mean, literally shaking more than I ever had. And
it's freaking hard enough to do what you're doing. You're managing pressure, and now you got that,
right. And this is 2004. It was absolutely crazy. I mean, like I said, I had 20, 30-year veterans coming out of the pit saying just absolutely amazing. I'd probably executed 150,000 that day.
That's insane.
Yeah. And I wasn't just doing Jeff Cardo's business. There was other business.
So let me ask you, because 2004 is relevant because that's when I left the floor.
Okay.
So I had my best month as a broker in May of '04. And by August of '04, I walked off forever because the pits dried up. Mm-hmm. So with this thing, this day that you had, that had to be May or earlier, correct? Or was the electronic platform still doing that much business in spite of the pits being mostly empty?
Well, the pits were still full at this time. So this was
so it must have
spring, early summer.
Yeah.
The pits were still full, and I remained there and in that position for a little while longer. And as things were drying up, another big trader, David Gov, also a super nice guy, he stole me and hired me away. So I would go up in the office and he would set up, I think I had 9 screens, and I would buy and sell on a computer while he was standing in the pit buying and selling there. And we would pick off discrepancies. Mm-hmm. And Cardo was doing it. The big boys were doing it.
And it became harder to do, obviously, as time passed, right?
As algorithms came into play, it just got harder and harder and harder, and it went out the window. But the reality is locals couldn't make that transition. Most of them couldn't make that transition to electronic trading because there's more to trading than just numbers, right? There's relationships, there's communication, there's knowing the feel of the motions of what's going on in the pit, the expectations of what numbers are coming out, how I'm going to react. There's a lot of things that went on that don't happen when you take away the environment of a trading pit and you put it in this cold machine. And all it cares about is, you write the algorithm, if this happens, do that. And if you do that, do this, and reverse and things. And I knew some guys that were able to adjust and write some algorithms and did pretty well. Most did not. I think Cardo was down like 19 million the following year. But I spent a year with Gov up there in '05. And, it just didn't really work out. It just, David made money, but it was a struggle. It was a challenge. Things were changing. And
I want to pause you and just roll the tape back. We're going to stop on '05, but you were talking about, when you're on the phones and, you're all watching each other. It's like one of those old spaghetti westerns, right? Like you just see the eyes and you're waiting for who's going to draw.
Yeah.
And then you figure stuff out. You're like, he bagged the general, right?
Yeah, right.
So in the pit itself, you'll know this too. We're all doing that with each other. So
sure. You're
looking at the eyes and the tells. Oh, he's got something. I could tell he's got something, right? And some guys were really good at detection. Mm-hmm. And one of the guys in my pit who was really good at detection was Gerard Shannon. He was a local. He was so attentive to everybody's mannerisms.
Yeah.
And, my guys, when I had a big order, they would come in and they'd cup my ear in their mouth and they'd whisper. Yeah. Right. Well, he knew right away that's a big order.
That's it. Yep.
All right. Exactly. So then he'd see if I start selling, he'd like, all right, he's got a lot to sell. So we had to figure out ways of deception.
Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
So then instead of Andy coming and cupping his hand on my ear, he would backpedal and lean his ass up on the rail. Right. So I'm facing in the pit and he's facing out of the pit.
Yeah.
And he goes, "You ready?" I go, "Yeah." And he'd be like, "Sell 2,000." And Gerard wouldn't pick up that I was just giving an order because my clerk's back was to the pit, right?
Yeah, right.
But he'd stare at me. He'd look at me. My move was like, say these are my trading cards. I'd put them in my pocket and I'd put my pen in my pocket and then I'd turn my back on the pit. And then Andy would look in the pit. I go, "What's Gerard doing?" He's like, "Oh, he's looking over there at Tony Spalla." And then I turn and I start selling him. It's
Tony, another great guy.
Yeah, he was one of my partners. So crazy deception. So now we're at 2005.
Yeah, I work with Gov, and it just didn't really pan out. It wasn't.
He didn't transition with the evolving market.
He stayed in the pit. I left, and I just said, "I'm done. The pits are done. I'm not going to sit here and die with the pits." And
that's what I did too.
And I know people that did, and I know people that are still there.
I do too.
Pete Ory, another great guy, good guy.
Great guy.
Yeah. I never knew anybody who worked harder than that guy. It was done. And what are you going to do? How do you take fighting, kicking, punching, stabbing, spitting, stomping, and turn that into a career?
Correct.
Where do you go? We were all in the same boat. I knew guys who went and drove trucks. I came out and I interviewed with all the financial advising companies, and everyone wanted me because I had contacts and I had people I knew with money.
Right.
And they're, and the beauty of the financial advising industry, and it still holds true to this day, is they go, just go out and talk to your family and friends and get in front of them, and we'll come with you, and don't worry, we'll take care of everything. And my answer always was, why would I want to go to my friends and family and show them that I don't have a clue what I'm doing, that I got to bring somebody else out with me? Because they're the ones who are most likely to tell everybody else. Now you've killed my market. And yet to this day, they still try and teach that shit. It's just stupid.
Let's just pause in the financial advisor. Aside from a very select few who make a shit ton of money because they make money,
yeah,
the financial advisor business, and no disrespect to you guys out there, you're all sitting in an office going, all right, today let's talk about this, that, and the other, and recommend this, that, and the other, this fund, that fund, da, 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 da. If you're that savvy at knowing what to do in the market, then you just make all the money yourself with your own money. Is that true?
You got a good point. I mean, let's go back a little bit to Drexel Burnham. One of the things I loved about Drexel Burnham was we'd actually meet up at 6 a.m. and we would go over, there would be a representative from every market, bonds, currencies, S&Ps, Eurodollars, whatever markets. And we would all, every morning, go over what happened overnight, what we expected to happen during the day, what markets we expected to be most active. And then we would sell our clients into that market. We weren't so money greedy that we're like, no, I want them all here in Eurodollars. No, the play was in bonds that day. So we're pushing our clients to do bonds on that particular day. But, that was incredible because if you knew exactly what was going on. You knew what to expect. You could foresee things. You could foretell some things. I mean, nobody knows what's going to happen in the market at any given time. But we were more well prepared than most people on a desk.
Yeah, that's cool.
That. I tried to introduce that to Nikko when I became the manager there, and I couldn't get the Japanese folks to wake up early enough to do this. They literally wouldn't come in and do it.
Wow. And
I'm just shaking my head going, what do you guys talk about on the phone? You don't even know what's going on.
Right.
It was crazy. Different mindsets, different people down there. Plenty of great guys that I met. Nakamura, Takamura, and some other folks. But even Tak now. Do you remember on the phones, what was he? Company was he with? I can't remember. But Hiromu Takamura was on the phones. He was an American guy here. He's now a golf pro.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, so he teaches golf pro, and I go play golf with him a bunch every summer still to this day, and Ralph Culloden as well. His badge was par. So
I remember that badge.
Yeah, so he was in the golf a lot. Takamura was Tak, T-A-K. That's how we knew each other, right? Mm-hmm. We knew each other by our badge names. Yep. We rarely knew the full name. I might catch your first name. Don't know. And if your badge has something to do with your last name, I'll figure it out. But otherwise, I don't know. You can name names all day long, and I might,
right.
I might know them, but I might not.
And when I don't know it, I go, "What's their badge?" And then you'll know if you knew them just from the badge.
Yeah. But that was interesting. There were, like I said, it took years to develop the skills to really be a part of what was going on in these pits, and to be able to, you talk about developing skills with large orders. I'd get large orders on the phone. Would I put a 5,000 lot in the pit? No. I might casually walk over to the clerk and just say, hey, you guys are buying lunch for my desk today, and say, oh, by the way, buy 5,000, and nobody would see it. Or I might just do 200 at a time. But
it's the camouflage. You have to do it.
But by the third, fourth, and fifth time I'm buying 200, they know, the whole pit knows, right? That I'm coming in because I'm buying at the market. And But what they don't know is am I done at 1,000?
Correct.
And then I go to 1,200 and then like, all right, is you going to 1,500 or 2,000? Everybody's trying to guess and figure that out because how much do I want to draw back? But I also want a piece of this, or I need this.
Right.
So yeah, there were all kinds of tricks and
sometimes you have a broker you really trust and you're like,
yeah,
call them up there. I got to buy 5,000.
Yeah.
Take your time.
Well, and the phones changed all that, right? When we started wearing phones on our hips, that changed everything. Because now I don't have to signal anything in the pit.
That's true.
I would just call them up and say, dude, buy me 5,000.
Yep.
But you would turn away from the pit so nobody could read your lips.
Correct.
That was another.
That's how granular we were.
Absolutely.
Every little nuance we were watching.
Absolutely. And we could make up new words and people still know what you're saying.
One of my favorite calls was Maverick.
Oh, yeah. I remember Mav.
He walked in our pit. He was working with a spread group, and he was very nervous, and he was watching the bonds. And every time the bonds upticked, he'd get on his toes, and then and so I'm talking to my clerk in the headset, and I'm like, Maverick's got something to do here. I can tell he's nervous, and then I determine. I go, I think he's got him to buy. I go, I have a 25 lot to buy with a tick. I go, I'm gonna go across the pit to Pete Moe and say buy him because he only was offering 25.
Okay. And
I'll bet you Maverick says for a bid. So I go, buy him, Peter. And he goes 25. And Maverick goes, for bid. So he got hammered and everybody piled in on him. And then he came up to me and he goes, how many did you buy? I go, 25. He goes, you're an asshole. Because I could read what he was doing. And I turned the market with a 25 lot because he didn't know any better. And Steve Mendes taught me that, by the way.
Yeah.
He'd have these little tick orders, and he'd go, sold! And he'd hit the guy on the exact quantity, which could be a 25 lot, and it would make everybody pile in,
It was funny because there were always tricks, right? And when electronic trading started, one of the tricks was if you're looking to buy, and you want to buy 1,000 or something like that, there was a certain person that would take advantage of the situation. He would offer 10,000. He would put an offer in for 10,000, and all of a sudden everybody would start hitting the bid. So he'd buy his 1,000 that he wanted, then he'd pull the offer.
Right, which is risky.
Which was risky, but not at that time so much because who's going to take out a 10,000 lot?
Right.
But here's the thing: it didn't last long, and everybody knew who the guy was, and it was Charlie Turner, and he started getting spanked. They started taking the opposite side that he was trying to just use as a decoy, and he started losing some money.
So what does that mean? When he put the 10,000 offer, they'd buy him then?
They'd be buying him up.
Because they knew he had to buy him.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And
that's that nuance, paying attention to the details,
so
right?
you flip that, and that now becomes a bid, so now he's got to pay even a tick higher. Well, you're right there to sell.
That's right. You're
You just made a quick tick, right? 1,000 times or something.
Yeah, Charlie Turner was Dean Witter, right? 505.
He bounced around. He was part Dean Witter, but I think he bounced around a little bit. I'm not sure.
What a colorful character that guy could. He's no longer with us, I don't think either.
Is he? Okay.
I think he passed. He
was.
Let's
say he wasn't welcomed in a lot of places.
Yeah, he was a character. We'll just put it that way.
He was one who would test the boundaries. Let's say. Of rules, regulations. I mean, look, we were all down there. None of us asked for permission for anything. We always asked for forgiveness. Now we live in the world, you have to ask permission.
Yeah.
But not in those days. It was.
What's interesting too is the longer you're on the floor and you see the same faces and a lot of rotating faces, and you're there for years and you hear all the stories, and you could almost write a little short story on each single person, even if you don't know them, because you know of them, right?
Oh, sure. So, absolutely. A lot of characters, man. We're all type quadruple A.
Yeah.
Right? We were all characters, and everybody did something on the side, right? I forget who the guy was that sold diamonds, out of a briefcase. And, there was another guy who did like travel.
Yeah, I bought this watch from, I can't remember his name. His badge was TAO. He was a great athlete in his time.
Yeah.
And he sold watches. I'm like, yeah, let me buy that watch. And Another guy sold insurance. Bob Prosy, I think, sold life insurance or something like that. And,
right. Another good guy. I sold Cuban cigars for like 7 years.
Which was illegal at the time, right? I mean,
just a little bit.
A little bit.
But I would literally collect money for boxes of Cubans. I would have my trading jacket stuffed with $15,000 to $20,000 in anything denominations from $5 bills to $100 bills. And I would just literally unload it on the hood of the car 4 levels down in the parking lot. And the guy would count the money, and I would go grab garbage bags full of boxes of Cuban cigars. And these were real Cubans.
Wow.
And I would bring them up, and I would just hand boxes out to the security guys. It was pre-9/11. So you could bring them on the floor. And guys, you're not supposed to, but you give a box of Cubans to security guys, and they're going to let you go.
Oh, yeah. It's human nature.
So there were times where I'd sell 300 boxes in a couple of days.
All right, so I'll tell you my side deals. When I was a pit clerk, I always had like 20 packs of gum in my pocket because I chewed gum all day.
Okay.
And say, hey, you got to stick a gum. And then finally, I'm like, look, I'm not the gum man. You want a pack? Give me a quarter. So we give me a quarter. The next thing you know, I got people coming from the meets going, hey, are you the gum guy? I need 20 packs of gum. So I'd leave with a big bag of change. But then later, my clerk, Andy, who's one of my best friends, he's a genius with wood craftsmanship, and he made the little one-hit boxes.
Okay.
They called them the Thompsons because his last name's Thompson.
Okay.
And he got a reputation. He couldn't keep up with the demand. He made tens of thousands of dollars selling these things.
Oh, yeah.
And then, of course, came the Super Bowl pools, which I threw $1,000 square pool. I used to have my clerks walk me to the car because I had like 20 grand in my pocket. I didn't want to get rolled.
Yeah, right.
We all had something going on.
Absolutely. I mean, there was a $10,000 square pool going on too.
Yeah.
And you'd split it 4 ways, put 2,500 in to win a quarter of that.
I think that one was a winner take all. It was $1 million.
That was a winner take all, and it was an offshore account.
Yeah.
Yeah, the FBI was always looking for that because my brother-in-law was involved in that for a number of years, and he got contacted by them. They threatened to go back 7 years on his, taxes and everything else, and he never sold out. But nobody ever did. They never got caught. But there's a lot of side stuff going on because that was our nature. That's who we are.
Gambled on everything.
Yeah.
Made bets on everything. Right.
Hell yeah. Go bet on the Mike Tyson fight. So I go put money on a Mike Tyson fight and pay to go to the stadium to watch the fight. And I'm there with, I can't remember his name now, but our goal was if we won enough, we were going to go to Thailand the next day and just spend a couple of days in Thailand, Bangkok. I lost. Tyson knocked the guy out in 30 seconds. I'm like, are you kidding me? Are you effing kidding me? So we go up to the Ginger Man up by Wrigley Field and we start betting basketball games to get our money back. And that's how we did it, right?
Yeah.
I did not go to Thailand. My buddy did go to Thailand, and he brought me back a nice, cool, like Cobra belt or something. But,
nice.
But
so you're a golfer. I'll tell you about the two funniest bets I made. One was with Nitro. I don't know if you ever knew Nitro.
Yeah.
He could hit a 4-iron like 300. He was so strong. We were talking golf. And he's like, I'll bet you're not that good or whatever. And I wasn't. I was like a 5, no biggie. I said, I'll tell you what, I'll give you 15 shots and we'll play your golf course. You pick the course. I go, or I'll give you 18 shots and you have to walk and carry your clubs. He goes, because I always walked and carried. He goes, you got to bet. So we go out to this Bonnybrook in Gurney or whatever, his home course. And it was like 89 degrees that day. It was humid, and he was just dragging his ass. And I got like 3 shots left to make up. He's caught in the trees. It's a par 5. I hit a driver off the turf, and our buddy Gib, did you know Gib Eshu?
Yeah.
So Gib was up at the green. He had a cart, and from 275 out, I curled the cup for double eagle. I didn't make it.
Oh, wow.
So I just had a little tap in, and when Nitro got up, I waited for him, and I looked at him while I was putting the ball in like this, and I made up all my shots. He's like, that's it. So him and his wife took me and my girlfriend, who became my wife, to Morton's in Westchester, and then Mark D'Souza and I had a golf bet. I said, I'll play you with just a 5-iron and a putter. And I go, I changed my mind. I'm going to play you with just a putter. So we went out to Cog 2, and he goes, you don't have to shoot the whole round, but let me pick the hole. So he picks a hole. Have you ever played Cog 2?
Oh, yeah.
So the first par 3 is over the ravine.
Yes. Yeah.
So he picks that hole. I think it's the 5th hole. And he goes, I'll go first. So he hits 2 irons into the trees. Right. So now he's hitting 5 off the tee. He goes, well, you go. And I had practice at the range with this Spalding flat bladed putter.
Okay.
And it hit a real tough shaft. So I could hit it like 2 1/4 line drives. All right. So I thought he was going to pick a par 5. He picks the par 3. So I hit a bullet over the hill. It hits the hill, bounces up like 30 feet, and lands 10 feet from the cup. I couldn't hit a better shot with my 8-iron, So I won dinner off of him too. Those were my 2 crazy bets.
Oh, there's a lot of that going on.
Yeah. Sorry to sidetrack on the story. So now things aren't going too good with the floor. You're moving on.
Yeah, I moved on. It's 2006, and I'm out of work again. That's a scary thing now because I don't have that world to go back to. Right, there just wasn't anything there was nothing like a pit, and to go sit in an office. I've been standing my whole life, whether it was bartending or landscaping or in the pits or whatever. So we didn't have skills. I didn't have a college degree. So what am I going to do? I got to be an entrepreneur. I got to start a business. And I tried several things, but boom, lo and behold, it wasn't. But a year or two later, the worst part is I moved from Glenview to Lakeville, Illinois, because I wanted to get my family away from the money aspect of life.
And at this time in 2006, you have how many kids?
I have 2 kids, and this was 2005. I built the house. It's like, okay, here's my dream home, 3,400 square foot house. Everything's brand new. Of course, you overpay for new construction, right, as always, and everything else. And me being in interest rate futures, I kind of understood what was going on, but I didn't see the housing bubble until 2006. So I built a house for like $480,000, and 2 years later, in the same neighborhood, they start selling for $190,000, and I'm just sitting there going, "All right, I can't take that hit." I don't even have a job, and I'm screwed. And this is hitting. Then my wife lost her job. She had a great job at J.P. Morgan, and she was let go. And it's like, all right, we're done. And at the time, you could give up your home and not have to pay taxes on whatever you were relieved of. You just walk away. In fact, they would even pay you to walk away. Good story, because I was in the neighborhood only a couple of years, maybe 4 years at the time, 3-4 years. I had another neighbor on the other side in what we call phase 1, who got transferred to California, but he was underwater, so he couldn't sell his home. So I said, hey, how about I come take over your payments? Or I'll just pay you rent. We'll do that. And he's like, you got it. So I got to move a quarter of a mile away, kept my kids in the same neighborhood, kept them in the same schools.
It was a good break.
It was a huge break because it wasn't as upsetting as it could be. And I had like 40 neighbors show up, pickup trucks, trailers, everything, moved everything out of my house and moved me over to the other house.
Awesome.
It was an incredible, it's hard for me to tell that story.
Yeah, that's awesome though.
It was an incredible day. But you bounce around, you try and figure out what to do. I got involved in, MLMs.
What is that?
Multi-level marketing businesses. So...
Which is like pyramid stuff?
Yeah, it's pyramid stuff. It's really what it is. And I got involved with air purification systems, which I'm not going to sell door to door. I just can't do that. My pride wouldn't let me. So what I did was I thought, okay, who needs this system more than anybody? And that's hospitals, because it killed nosocomial infections, which were MRSA and the really bad stuff that are in hospitals. And I got my ties into Lake Forest Hospital, and they were very close to pulling the trigger on a $2 million deal. And then it was probably another $500,000 a year upkeep. But
what do you get out of a $2 million deal? What would your...
I honestly, I couldn't tell you.
Okay.
I couldn't.
But it would have been sweet.
Oh, it would have been 6 figures.
Yeah.
But low 6 figures. At the very last minute, lawyer comes in and says, no, we can't do it. I said, why not? He goes, because then we'll be admitting we have a problem. I said, well, doesn't the last year's $19 million in lawsuit payouts tell you you have a problem and everybody else? And he said, yeah, but we're not going to do that. I said, you have a chance to do something very good here. We don't have to tell anybody. We don't have to brag about it. I don't have to advertise it. But you have a chance to do something good here, and they wouldn't do it.
Wow.
They pulled the plug at the last minute.
I don't agree with that logic because you're just making an improvement. Things can always improve.
It just depends how other people see your vision. It was the same thing. I got invited to a meeting while I was doing this air purification stuff at Motorola. Turns out it was some of the top people in Red Cross. And they're talking about 3-day response teams anywhere in the world. And I said, well, you're talking about sanitizing the tools, the equipment, the surgery stuff, and all kinds of things. I said, what about the air? And like, what do you mean? I said, well, isn't everything transformed through the air or through water? And you've already got purified water. Why aren't you purifying the air? And they're like, that's a great idea. Would you like to come over to Paris to our home office and present this? I said, I would love to. So I called the president of the company. I explained to him the situation I got into. And he looks at me and goes, you're going to have to do that on your own dime. I go, what do you mean? I'm just asking for $5-7 or something to help me get over there. I've been out of work, lost my home, don't have any money. And he's like, nah, I don't have time. We just did a $15 million deal with the military. They were ramping up some base, I think in Georgia. So he wouldn't support it. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. This is an opportunity of a lifetime for a company like this. And would I become part of a 3-day response team? Absolutely. But it all fell apart because I couldn't afford to go. We all have these opportunities that are amazing in life or can be. And you know what? It's all about timing.
Yep.
So I struggled. I struggled looking for things to do. I didn't want to be a financial advisor at the time because I didn't like picking pockets of people I knew, which is what it was in those days. I think it came back around 2015-ish or so, 14. I got into underwriting, processing loans. A buddy of mine was head of half the country for Morgan Stanley residential lending. Said, go get some experience, and then I can bring you over. Went to Chase Bank. I was doing modification loans, trying to help people save their homes. Frustrating as hell.
Because that was like after the market crash, right?
That's after the market crash, the housing bubble, the crash. We're trying to save homes here, and it was ridiculous. They weren't saving homes. Nobody was saving homes. They weren't saving 7, 9, 10, 11% of the homes out there. They were saving less than 2%. And I'm being kind. So after about a year of Chase, and this was in Milwaukee, I took a job with Bank of America in Rolling Meadows and did processing. And, I kept getting bumped up. I didn't get higher job positions. What I was I keep getting higher titles because I was top 5% producer in the country. They weren't going to move me anywhere. I was making the money doing underwriting loans. I was doing 20 to 24 loans a month. Most people were doing 2 or 3. On my team, 2 or 3 would be good. So I was the one who was always making up for the rest. And so I would be level 1, then level 2, then level 3. And then finally at level 3, I said, well, what's the pay? You're asking me to do 20% more work. You got to pay me more money. And they're like, oh, we didn't think of that. And so they said, come back Monday and let us know if you want to be the first level 3 guy. I said, well, you come back and let me know what you're going to pay me. And I came back and they said, I will give you 5% raise. I said, fine, done. I wasn't going to do 20% more work. I couldn't. I was giving them everything I had, but I got more money. Mm-hmm. And then other people who became level 3 would come by my desk and say, hey, I'm level 3 just like you. And I go, you're welcome. And they would go, what do you mean? I said, well, didn't you get the 5% raise? They would go, what 5% raise? I said, you didn't even ask, did you? And that's the corporate world. They love to give you that title. They're not going to give you the money.
Correct.
So I just laugh. And I'm like, seriously, people, wake up. But I finally spent about maybe a month or maybe longer. And every day my boss would come by in the morning and I was always the first one there. I thought being first one there and last one to leave would, get you bonus points, but no, it gets you stuck in the same seat. And he would walk by and I'd say, it's today of the day. And he finally snapped at me because I was asking, is today the day you're going to fire me so I can go collect unemployment? And he finally got pissed at me and he said, don't ever bring it up again. And I said, you're right. I'm sorry. I don't mean to give you that kind of stress. I quit. And he goes, what? I said, I quit. He goes, why are you quitting? I said, I can't do stupid anymore. And the shit that goes on here is stupid. And he looks at me and goes, I can't argue. But they made me stay the 2 weeks. Now, if you know the financial world, banking world, somebody quits or gets taken or has another job somewhere else, they're out the door in minutes, right? No, they made me show up for 2 weeks. And because they knew I'd do my job. I was dedicated. And I did. But left that, became a financial advisor.
Did you know somebody in the business and then that helped you in, or did you just
I got a call from a friend, an ex-trader guy, might have even been John McGuire. Said, come on into AXA and, they'll hire you and stuff like that. And so I did. And it was stupid from the get-go. Bring in your family and friends. Let's prove to them you don't know anything. Here's a deck of D&B cards, Dun & Bradstreet cards that were decades old to cold call. Make 200 calls a day. And I'd look at them and go, excuse me? I said, I'm not just out of college here. I'm not that stupid. I'm not doing it. And I said, okay, I'll tell you what, I'm going to make 10 calls. And I'm going to bet you that 4 of them the people are dead. Sure enough, 5 of them were. I said, they no longer exist and you're making people sit down. It's a waste of time. Again, stupid. After about, how long did I do that for? I don't know, about 7 years. I call myself a recovering financial advisor now. Because what I learned was that I had an advantage because of my background over most other people, but that was also a problem. People were afraid to come to me because they didn't want to feel stupid. They didn't want to come across as being stupid and not knowing anything about money and investing. And here I am, a Wall Street guy. It was not a good combo. I thought that would give me cred.
Right.
But no, it made people afraid to talk to me. And then when I did work with people, I just found out how stupid they are with money. Sorry for those of you I talked to. But the reality was I said, I can't do this anymore. I'm not helping people. They don't know what I'm doing. They sit there and say, yeah, we get it. And they stare with a deer in the headlights and they shake their head and nod their head. But they had no idea. Why was this particular investment good for your portfolio? Can
I just pause you on this?
Yeah.
Do you think people are stupid with money because in the grand scheme of things, the system trains us to be stupid?
That's part of it.
Okay. And you probably have something in your book about that. So
that's what brought my whole book about.
Okay. I didn't mean to jump ahead.
So I was because I realized that people didn't understand. I said, now I got to educate. Now, most financial advisors will tell you, yes, you always have to educate your client. But they're not good at it because they don't know themselves. There's so many financial advisors that they're clueless. They just do what they're told. What the company tells them to do, this mutual fund, do this ETF. And I said, in fact, I went to my mother, I told you recently passed, and we got some of the funds from her, and it was invested with a company I don't want to name. And I just called up and had a meeting, and I said, what the hell is this ETF and mutual fund investment stuff? And the person's like, well, that's just, it reduces risk. I know what it does. Why is my mother's money invested in it? Because my sister had taken over the estate, and she didn't know any better. And I just get that stuff out of there. Close that stuff out. Move that money. Go buy these stocks. And it was funny because then I got a notice from the company saying, oh, you've changed your strategy for your future and investing. And I'm just laughing. Because again, people buy this stuff because we don't know any better. There's no training for finance. Nowhere. Not in schools, not at home. As a financial advisor in front of groups, I would say there's 2 things I know most spouses never talk about: money and sex. I'm here to help you with one of those. We try to break up the monotony. But that's the reality. And so we grew up not knowing anything about money. On top of that, we're sheltered by our parents until we get out of high school. From all the harsh realities of life, we don't teach our kids anything. Then we send them off to college. They go crazy, right? And experimental with drinking, drugs, and everything else, and then they get out of college and it's like, hey, good luck. You're off the payroll now. Go get them. And it's like, wait a minute. I don't know anything. We'll go get a job. And then go get an apartment. You need a car, go buy a car. But you got to start paying for this yourself. And the funny part is when you go to college these days, and it's been going on for a while, you get a debit card. Mom and dad load the debit card. When they first came out, those debit cards were just for on-campus to buy food, right? To buy dinner and breakfast and lunch and stuff, and food halls. But those expanded. Nowadays, you can use that anywhere for anything. So kids learn how to spend, but they never have to put the money in. They don't have to pay it back. They call home to mom and dad and say, oh, about a money, oh, it's broken. Your mom and dad sit there and say, they're going to give you the money because you're claiming you're starving and you're crying and all that stuff. Mom and dad's going to give you money. And then
it's like a Pavlov experiment.
What does mom and dad say? You really got to learn how to budget. Same mom and dad who don't have a budget.
Right.
Combine all this stuff together. I get pissed off. And I said, I about 3 years ago, I got a calling. And the good Lord came down to me and said, because I became Catholic back in 2009. I wasn't originally. My wife was very strongly Catholic, Notre Dame, father Notre Dame, a brother Notre Dame. Father asked if I would raise the kids Catholic when I asked for her hand in marriage, and I said, fine, and you pay for Notre Dame. My kids get into Catholic school. I said, I better have a skin in the game myself. So I actually became a very strong Catholic. I was chairman of the parish council.
Where were you prior to that with your faith?
Agnostic, didn't think much about it, wasn't raised much with it. My mother was religious, my father wasn't. Father was Catholic, mother was Lutheran, I believe. And those two worlds did not mesh well at all in the 50s when they got married. But I've embraced it. And so I got this calling, and the calling was I need to teach financial literacy. So literally within 3 months, I had a team put together, branding, marketing, sales. We're building our own system because what I was going to do is I was going to develop classes. And I wrote out 28 different classes. We were going to sell these, or I was going to record them. I wanted to get like Tim Allen, Mike Rowe, and some big names because you have to entertain as well as teach, educate when you're dealing with kids. And we were going to sell to juniors and seniors in high school. And I had a studio because I had my radio show at the time, multi-million-dollar studio. I was doing a TV show briefly. So I had everything set up.
You want to talk about the radio show or before we go on to?
We can. The radio show was 4 years. It was through the pandemic. It was originally designed to be financial literacy, and it was originally designed to help me with my financial advising and getting clients. Didn't do either one of those. What happened, though, we had the Great American Walkout 2022 with corporate world, and I said, oh, that's a whole lot of big shots that are going to walk out, try and start their own business and think they know what they're doing. Think if I hang a shingle outside my door, people will come banging it down. And I said, oh, you have no clues. You guys have no idea. So I interviewed business owners who helped other businesses grow. And so we would mostly what I would start off with, what's your background? And then we would say, so why do people come to you? What are the problems businesses have, and why do they come to you? We would discuss that for a little while. And then we would wrap it up with, well, what are your solutions to those problems? So I was trying to help each of these business owners develop their own business at the same time. But at the same time, I'm learning a ton, right? 4 years, 50 interviews a year. I probably interviewed somewhere between 800 and 1,000 people to get to those 200 that I did live. So I learned a lot. And it put me in a good position to start this business and develop these classes. And I said, you know what? And our business plan was killer. We had a lot of people banging down our doors because our business plan was, look, if we only hit 3% of the market, there's 7 million juniors and seniors in high school in this country right now. And if we only hit 3% of the market at $149 a kid, they get all 28 classes, they get them for life, they can bring them home to their family, don't care, not charging for that. One fee, And you get 20 classes, you can listen to 2, or you can listen to them all. We'd make 30 million, a little over 30 million. And I said, most people brag and say, we're going to hit 6% of the market. I said, we're only going to hit 3. Now, I had a sheik who was a client of mine when I was a broker down in Eurodollars, and I reached out to him because I needed to borrow $5 million. I needed 2.7 to pay for everybody and everything that they could do to build this, including the systems and then hiring the microbes and the Tim Allens, and none of this is cheap. Plus, I knew it was going to overrun in cost, so I said borrow $5 million and you don't have to go back. Long story short, I wind up going to Dubai. I flew over there, sat down with some guys that claimed that they were part of the sheik and his entourage, signed documents, went to the Department of Ministry, the Department of Finance, put in paperwork and everything else. Everything was hunky-dory. I'm out about $150K at this time. I hope my wife doesn't hear that. And I come home and they're like, the money will be in your bank account by the time you get home. Well, it wasn't. So now this is, August of 2 years ago. I'm just like, son of a bitch. I had a bad feeling. Well, then all of a sudden, the guys are saying things to me like, hey, I need help. Can you help me with another client we have who wants to build hospitals in the U.S.? I said, sure. I would always say yes. I didn't know anybody in the hospital world, but I'd find out. I'd figure it out and help them out. You're helping out some royalty guy from Qatar, he said. That was a friend that wanted to build a hospital. Fine, I'll help you out. Just give me my money, and then I'll help you out. Well, he goes, oh, okay, I'll send you some information. It was a login to a bank account that showed my name in the bank account with $5 million. I go to transfer it out. And I was smart. I only tried to transfer $50,000 to test the waters. And nothing moved. And they come back and they go, oh, you got to pay a fee for transferring, and then you got to go through here and this. Long story short, it went on and on and on and on. And after 2 years, I just said, I know I got taken, and I wasn't going to pay any more money out. And I didn't after that trip. But I know people in business that have lost way more than I did. And are still involved, still thinking 3, 4, 5 years later that they're still going to get that money.
Is that just a scam that was running?
Yeah, it was a total scam. The sheik's email address had gotten hacked, so he never even knew what was going on. And I ran into some CFOs that said, yeah, they know many business owners that are gone down that same ramp, and they still all believe they're going to still get the money. And I'm like, and they've paid out way more than you've paid out. And I'm like, well, they're just a lot stupider than I am, and I'm stupid to fall into that trap. But that's what happens. So, as an entrepreneur, you got to shift. The radio show was coming to an end because iHeartMedia wanted my show. My friend Jack Gillette was begging to get my show for a year and a half, and the powers that be at the studio, I don't know why they didn't want to give it up. I could speculate, but I'd rather not. Not here. But long story short, I said, then fine, I'm leaving you, and I'll start a podcast, and I'll go with iHeartMedia. I get my friend Jack. He's got connections with sponsors and stuff like that, and and maybe make a little money at that. But then I said, what am I going to do to teach financial literacy? And I had a call with a lawyer out in New York, friend of mine, and he just said, he goes, Bill, I love the fact that you live your life with intent. With such intent, and you're 62 years old, and you're still living your life with intent. You have no desire to retire. And I go, no, it's never going to happen. You retire, you die slowly if you don't have plans on doing something. So he said, why don't you write a book? Me write a book? Are you kidding me? I never even thought about it. But I thought about it, and so I started writing, and literally, I went on a trip with my family to the Jersey Shore in early August last year, and came home and just sat down for 2 months and knocked out this book called Our Mindset on Money. And subtitle is It's Easy to Control, So Why Don't We? And it's really designed for people who are living paycheck to paycheck, because there's a reason why they live paycheck to paycheck, because money controls them. They spend everything they make. They fall for every marketing trap that's out there. And they're accustomed to spending everything they make. You know, you have your fixed costs and you've got your variable costs, which are going to be there every month. It's the incidental, the leftover money, that's where you have control. But most people don't. And I don't care how much you make. I've met people who are $100 million business owners and up. I just spoke to a group of them in New York a month ago. And one of the guys there, literally, he's got to be in his early 70s. I don't know how big his company is, but I know it's over 100 million to be in that group. And I said, why aren't you retired? And he said, he's laughing at me. He goes, why would I retire? I don't have enough money to live the way I want to live. Well, you're in your early 70s. You've probably got a ton of money. You just told me about your mega-foot yacht. And I'm just shaking my head. I'm like, money still controls this guy. That's how tight of a grip it has on so many people. And we come from money, right? My father used to say, I don't understand. Money has never driven you, but all you've ever done has been in the money business. I go, it's the game. It wasn't about the money for me. It never was, never is, it's still not. I'm not trying to make a lot of money with this book. I'm trying to reach a lot of people. I'm trying to help a lot of people understand how to get control of money. Take control of your money by thinking about the decision process that you use into spending your money. You know, we do a lot of impulsive and spontaneous buying, and we're set up to. So this book is not about what to do with each and every dollar you have. It's what to do with your mind. And so that you can take control of money, because once you do, guess what? You'll have better health, better relationships at home, at work. You know, do you remember when you were, maybe just out of college and you go out to, your friends all want to go out to dinner and you're like, oh crap, I can't afford that. I don't have enough money, and they're like, come on. And you go. And then you order the cheapest thing on the menu because you're trying to get out as cheap as you can. You're drinking water. You're ordering a salad and you're trying to get out of there. And then your friends all say, hey, let's just split this 5 ways. And you've just doubled your expense. Did you have fun? No. Did you enjoy the meal? No. The company? No. All you thought about was the money. And so if you gain control of your money and don't have those kinds of thoughts anymore, guess what life has to offer out there? Some really cool stuff. A lot. You can tell I'm passionate about this. And trust me, I have very big plans for this book. I mean, we're gonna present to the chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff.
Awesome.
If we can get him to put it on his book recommendation, that'll go out to 2.5 million military service members. We want to continue that process with helping the military that transition to civilian life. Their number one fear is financial literacy. So we're going to develop a program for them. My website's going to have a lot of information for them, whether it's about credit, whether it's about borrowing, whether it's different aspects of money. We're going to work with the Salvation Army. I'm doing some things with Billy Dorsey. He's a multi-Grammy award-winning songwriter that has a program helping folks transition from the streets to getting back into the game of life, and we're going to do some financial literacy work with them. We're going to try and work with homeschooling or community colleges. We have a lot of big plans for this book. And again, this is about how many people can we reach. Not long ago, I was involved with doing some work in different countries. We did virtual conferences, and we would teach them how to build a business, and then I would teach a little bit about financial literacy. And it was all for underprivileged people, South America, South Africa, Philippines, and they would literally bus kids to universities to listen to these 4-day events. We have 40 speakers, very prominent people, and we would teach, and they'd get all pumped up. But the problem was, a week later, were they still pumped up? Did they still remember? So I said, we have to do something more what's the word I'm trying to think of? We have to be able to provide them with something more than just getting you pumped up, rah.
It's got to root itself in there.
Yeah, so you get a book, you got something physical. You can go to my webpage and you can start learning. We don't have the programs up just yet. The book comes out in about a month and a half. We're probably going to set a launch date by the end of next week. And we're taking our time because we're trying to do it right. We got to put a marketing plan, pre-launch, launch, post-launch, 6 months, 8 months out. How are we going to continue the momentum that we build? So there's a lot of plans. I've got a team of 8 folks now that, we're all putting this together. And they're great people. Everybody that works with me, we're called contributors. And I'm a contributor. There's no employees. There's no negative connotation. You're a contributor because you buy into what I'm trying to do. And my calling is now becoming part of your calling. And it's great to work with people under those conditions. They really give you your best.
So I want to share some thoughts with you. One of my gigs is I'm a realtor by trade, and I get a lot of young first-time home buyers. They don't even know how to write a check.
Right.
They don't even know how to go to the bank to get a certified check or a cashier's check. So this is my personal belief. Whoever controls the world, and I'm a nihilist when it comes to that, the forces are trying to weaken us in any way they can.
Yep.
They don't want us to know how to manage money.
They don't.
They want us to be a slave to the system. And so what you're doing is you're pushing back against the dark forces, in my opinion. That's what my book's about.
With a sledgehammer.
I have 3 sons, and this is what I've told my sons about money. Money isn't everything, but it's almost everything when you don't have enough. Then you got to worry about putting gas in your tank. Can you buy groceries? Can you pay your bills? Can you live till tomorrow financially?
Right.
So the object is to have enough money, right? If you have more than enough, that's even better, but you could have too much and it could screw everything up. So
bingo.
That's basically what I taught them.
Yeah, you're spot on. It's the thing is money's a tool. That's all it is. It's a tool. But it's the one tool that has a grip on us like no other. And if you could learn to control money, it no longer has a grip on you. Like I said, there's so much more to life to enjoy. Moments in life. Mm-hmm. We used to joke in the financial advising world that people would spend more time planning their next vacation than they would their full retirement. It was a joke, but it was true. And when have you ever gone on vacation and spent exactly what you budgeted for?
Right. Never.
Right. And once you start going over what you've spent, it's no longer fun. Now it's not a vacation anymore. Now it's how bad am I going to get dinged? How much is this going to hurt? Christmas. Look at the movies. Mom and dad have to get that one toy the kid wants, that every kid wants, and they're willing to overpay for it. They're willing to push people around for it, do all kinds of things. What does that tell your kid? What does that say about you? It's almost stupid. It's like, if you can get past that, because you're willing to go into debt to buy presents at Christmas that you're going to have to pay off. That means that's that incidental money that you have left over at the end of the month is getting chewed up.
And then some, right?
And then some, right? And now you got to pay all that back. Well, guess what? Utilities went up. Well, there goes less and less of your incidental money, right? So, and you didn't even know it because you're used to spending $1,000 a month in incidental money. You're used to spending $150 a month in Starbucks. Why do you think people don't want to do budgets? They don't want to know where they spend their money, right? So, but if you learn, do that budget, and because to teach you where you spend your money, but to teach you how and why. And once you start getting a grip on that, you start enjoying more things that life has to offer. You'll enjoy that vacation because you know you can do it. Otherwise you wouldn't. You're not going to go to Europe if you can't afford it. Maybe come to Chicago. But so you can tell I am very passionate about this. I'm trying to help people, trying to help more of the underprivileged. Those people living 70 to 80% of the people living paycheck to paycheck. Mm. Another target market is those 18 to 25-year-olds. You talk about, you run into people who can't even write a check. I do some work with some high schools in their incubator programs with kids that are trying to build and learn how to build businesses. And I mentor some of those groups. And one day I asked the kids, I said, so how do you know how much money you have in your bank account? I know this is at a prominent private school. And, one kid said, I go to the ATM, I put my card in, it tells me. I said, lost your ATM card. How do you tell? And silence. No idea. ATM machine doesn't work. The system's down. How do you know? I don't. Asked one person, and she said, she goes, well, I know when I'm out of money because I get a notification saying that I'm overdrawn. I said, that's the only time you know when you have how much money you have in your account? She goes, yeah, pretty much. We don't have any educational system. Look, when I wanted to build those classes, and I still think it's a viable plan. There's 26 states, at least there was last count, that have a mandate from the government. Mandates come from the governor, and the governor said that you have to have financial literacy course of some sort taken in order for you to graduate. Now, the beauty about mandates is they always come in an election year and they always sound really good, but nobody ever follows through with them. So how did I know I could capture 3% of the market? I knew I could capture more than that, a lot more. Because I'll go to a governor and I'll say, put your money where your mouth is. I'll call you out because these kids need it. And you mandated it, and not one state has a program in place. Not one. So when I say I can capture 3% of the market, I'm pretty confident. So hopefully if I can make enough money in this book, I'll follow through with that.
I wrote a book too, and a lot of my book is about internal mastery and how we live our best life. Okay.
Yeah.
But I don't talk about the money. And this could be like the number one on the list of internal mastery is this is the first one you need, because then the domino effect happens, right? Mm-hmm. Then, without the stress of money, it's a tool and you know how to use the tool, then you're releasing your brain's superpowers to be kind and be grateful and all that stuff. This could be actually step one in the process of internal mastery, which I've never thought about. I'm reverse engineering it and going, you have to be all of these things, do all these things, and then you can be the strongest version of yourself to make more money. But if you would just teach people how to manage the money, this could be step one. I'm going to really do some thinking on this.
And you're spot on, because what this does, if you learn to control money, what it does is it opens up the world to you. It opens up experiences you never would have thought of. I mean, look, I've been broke a number of times. It's no fun. I get that. And I get some people don't make enough money to be able to take control of it. I understand that. I can't help everybody. But I am trying to help those that I can. And look, my kids were in town for Christmas this past year. My daughter-in-law was from Dallas. She picked out the restaurant in downtown Chicago. And we go to this restaurant, and I can finally afford it. After struggles and all that stuff. And we had so much fun at that restaurant. The waitress came up and gave us dessert. She said, you have no idea. Everybody around you is watching you guys.
Awesome.
You were having so much fun as a family. And we were in a half booth, so everybody could look in on us. And we were just having a blast, because I wasn't worried about how am I going to pay for this. That's the moments that you capture if you can control your money. Those are special moments.
Amen.
You only get them once. You only get a shot at it once.
Amen. I'll share a quick story with you about similar. We went with some friends. They're our dearest friends, married couple. Their kids are the same age as our kids. We've been together forever. And it was a special occasion. I think it was Dorothy and my anniversary. So we always did a special dinner. And we went to Joe's Stone Crab in the city. Yeah. Okay. It's at least $100 a person minimum. And we told our friends, it's very expensive. Well, how much? And we told them, half of me felt bad, right? but half of me is like, hey, you guys, you make decent money. Your mortgage is almost paid off. You can splurge a little bit. This is special to us. Let's enjoy, right?
Yeah.
You're going to spend triple on a dinner that you normally do, but you're only going to do this once in a while,
Right.
and we're gonna live it up. And then the check came, and my friend, he threw money on the table, okay? And he was all nervous and sweaty and everything, and he just threw the money on the table, and he was trembling, and he goes, "Is that enough?" And I counted the money, and it was like $150, but it was really $250 is what he would have had to contribute to the bill.
Yeah.
I go, yeah, it's plenty. Don't worry about it. And I thought to myself, and they have enough, but it's just even the worry about money. That's a problematic too, right?
Absolutely. There's folks that think about money in every kind of way you can imagine. Hoarders, of money and such. And look, the point of learning to control money is so that you can enjoy life. You need to celebrate times in lives, right? We need to celebrate the birthdays, the certain holidays maybe. We need to celebrate when we're together. If you have grown kids like I do, my kids live far away, and my daughter's actually moving very far away. But when we get together, those are special times and special moments. And do I want to be worried about what those moments cost? No, I want to celebrate my time with them. I want to enjoy it. Can I do things that don't cost a lot of money? Absolutely. And have just as good a time? Absolutely. You don't have to go to those $100 dinners places. Those are special occasions no harm in celebrating. They don't say you can't take it with you, right? My dad once asked me about it, what do you think your inheritance is going to look like? And Dad, I hope it's zero. I said, spend it. You earned it. Spend it.
That's so funny. If I die with spending my last penny on my last breath, I'm okay. If I don't leave my boys anything,
yeah.
It'd be nice to, but it's not a concern of mine. And then you touched on something. There's a famous line in Wall Street. I think it's
greed is good.
Martin Sheen says it to his son Bud. He says, "Money is something that you need. Money is something you only need if you don't die tomorrow." So that's a cool quote. And I just want to share this with you about enjoying the moments of life. Since my wife passed away, I try to one Sunday a month. I call Pasta Sunday, because when I grew up, my Sicilian family, grandma would have Pasta Sunday every Sunday, and the whole family came. She spent all morning making the meal, and I've written about that many times. So what I do is I invite friends and family, all the people that I love, not my whole family because everybody's got their own stuff, but I've had almost 50 people here on a Pasta Sunday, and I throw a bunch of food out, and then people will say, what can I bring? Bring whatever you want. Sometimes we wind up with 5 apple pies. Who cares? You know what I'm saying? And everybody's gotten to know each other. These are people from all walks in my life. We eat and drink. I don't have to worry about, I'm going to spend an extra $250 at the store.
Bingo.
And it's not that I have an abundance of money. It's just, I don't care. It's worth the $250 to me. You know what I'm saying?
Exactly. And all those people are enjoying that moment because they're not thinking about money, because it's not costing them or harming them in any way financially. And we just have to learn, how do we live our lives with what we make within our means so that we can enjoy those types of events and those times.
So you're teaching a little bit of how to prioritize, yes? Like, you're going to spend a little money, but at what benefit to you?
Well,
right?
I try to stay away from talking about money directly. I talk more about the mindset. I'm trying to get people to understand that you can live within your means. Look, you don't have to make $1 million a year to be happy, or 150,000 or 200,000. I know people making over $1 million a year that are not happy. You do too. It's learning how to live within your means of what you have and why. If you understand that there's a benefit to learning how to control money, you're going to want to do it more. If there's no benefit, nobody's going to do it, right? But one thing we always want to know is the why. And I'll go back to my corporate days with Bank of America, and they'd make changes every 4 months. We'd have to change how we underwrite and process loans, and I would always ask why, and I was always told you don't need to know why. Just do what you're told. That's what you get paid for. And the most important thing to people typically is the why. So when you ask, why am I always out of money? Well, here's a way to learn how to not be out of money. And that's a benefit to you. Does that sound good? Because if it does, take a look at this book. It could change your life. I truly believe that. And that's the point of writing this book, is to help change people's lives. Am I bucking the powers that be? Oh, big time. I guarantee you this is not something that's going to be looked upon kindly by some of the bigger powers. But you know what? People got to stand up.
You referred to it as the calling, okay?
Yeah.
You can be called to do something, but if I had asked you, like, why? What is the benefit? Why are you doing this? Why are you trying to, like, help others?
I don't have a choice. So when you're called, you don't have a choice. It hits you over the head. It hit me in one day. And the next day I woke up, I knew exactly what I had to do. It was clear as a bell. I saw it 5 years out. As far as I clear as a bell. I didn't know the path, and I mean, I got to one point where I looked up at the Lord and I said, God, if you're putting signs in front of me, you need to remember, I'm a guy. I don't see what you put right in front of me. So you're going to have to make it a little challenging for me to get your message, because I'm not sure what direction to go here, and direction would come.
So can we interchange the word calling with purpose? God is revealing your purpose, because that's how I look at it.
Yeah, you can. I mean, we're just servants, and God just revealed to me how I can serve best. Mm-hmm. So that's the purpose. Yeah, absolutely. But it's just so clear. But God didn't tell me exactly how to do it.
Right.
He just said, this is what you need to do. Figure it out. And it took me 3 years.
And I marvel, we've had 2 conversations today and on the phone. I marvel at your ability to network. You're like a bulldog. You go in a direction, you're like, I'm going to, whatever it takes for me to get to this person, you get there, right? It's pretty remarkable.
I have no qualms. I have no qualms about, look, I've reached out to guys at the IMF and the WBG, the World Banking Group that controls the IMF. Most people don't even know about that. I call them up. And there was a guy in a networking group. He said, I'm a guy who knows a guy. Anybody you want to know somebody, you come to me. And I laughed at him. I said, dude, you don't know a guy. I said, who do you want to talk to? What part of the world? I'll hook you up. I have been blessed to have a personality in that which people do introduce me to other people. And I can have conversations with anybody at any level. I don't care if it's a 5-year-old or a 95-year-old who's brilliant. I can have conversations, and so I've made a lot of friends, and all over the world. I've tried to work with people in rural Mexico, how can we get computers to those folks, and how can we get the internet? And wait a minute, what are the consequences of bringing the internet to that area? Because good and bad come together. I've worked with people in different Philippines and South America, South Africa, Israel. Got some good friends over there at the Herzog Hospital, which is an amazing hospital, and dealing with the brain stuff. And I've been blessed to have so many amazing people in my life. When I had to write acknowledgments for the book, my first sentence is, how do you acknowledge everybody who's made a difference in your life? Mm-hmm. That was my first line. How do you?
It's so important, though, that you make the statement like that. Like, I'm blessed to have all these people in my life. Every prayer has gratitude about that.
Yeah, it's I even thanked those people who fought to keep me down.
Yeah.
I said, because you know what? You made me stronger.
Oh, yeah.
I did name some names, and of course, I probably should have named other names that I didn't. But you know what? I've got probably so many different ideas for a next book. Probably would be go over like a lead balloon. One of my ideas, which is and people ask me, who watches TV for the commercials? I do. Commercials tell us more about ourselves than anything.
Could look at it that way, yeah.
They tell us how stupid the marketing people think we are. They literally do. Driving here today, listening on the radio, and it's like a credit company, if you're in too much debt, you can't get out, and you can go to these credit services that'll help you out, and they'll reduce the amount you owe, and then they get you on a payment plan and get you on your way. And they claim, well, we're not that one of those types of people. We just want to fit you into the right program. You just said you weren't one of those people that the program. And then you said you're going to put them in a program. What a lot of people don't know is that's no different than declaring bankruptcy. It's 7 years on your credit report. Same thing as bankruptcy.
Right.
Which, don't be afraid of bankruptcy. Not a big deal. Trust me. I've never declared bankruptcy, but I know, I've been broke enough to, but look, in the housing bubble, people declared bankruptcy and they were able to buy a house a year later.
Mm.
Why be afraid of bankruptcy? Don't be afraid in life.
I want to touch on the commercials real quick because my friend Joe was here earlier, and I had music on the computer, and we were having a meeting in the room here, and then a commercial came on the computer on YouTube, and he started laughing. He goes, "I love this commercial." It was an insurance company with the emu animal or whatever that thing is.
Yeah.
And I go, I often wondered, like, when an advertising firm for Aflac goes, here's our idea. They're sitting in the boardroom with the executives going, we want to have this white duck that goes, Aflac. And that's going to, how do you even pitch that? And then that's the commercial, It's crazy.
There are some brilliant commercials. There are some brilliant ones. We can go all the way back to, because I talk about marketing and stuff, and there's the logos, pathos systems that are used in marketing and such, and there's puffery, and puffery is kind of like better ingredients, better pizza. Puffery, you can't prove it, you can't disprove it. But
right.
It can be said. But the Wendy's, the old ladies, where's the beef?
Oh man,
that was not even written. That was not part of the commercial. The old lady just came out and said it.
Oh man,
and they loved it and they ran with it. And she became famous. She traveled around the country for a year after that.
That's still a catchphrase. That's part of our Americana now, right?
Right.
That's saying.
And it was just the woman just spit it out because he just looking at where's the beef? It's just incredible how something so minor can turn into something so big. And, for everybody listening, there is opportunity galore out there for you. In my book, I said, if you're chasing the almighty dollar, I said, if that's really your goal and that's your gig, that's you, that's fine. I said, but why wouldn't you put yourself in a position where money's chasing after you?
Yeah, I like that.
A lot less stressful. And
awesome.
You can do that. Start your own business.
Awesome. We're going to do more podcasting. Man, you got me thinking about the priority of internal mastery. I think step one is going to be what you're on to.
Yeah.
Because that opens up your mind to do all the other things you have to do. And I want to finish with this, guys, this question at the end of most of my podcasts on a scale of 1 to 10, 10 being the best. How happy and fulfilled are you?
With this podcast?
No, with your life.
With my life. What a roller coaster. But, nobody goes through life unscathed. Nobody. Everybody gets slammed and hurt ways that you never saw coming. But there's so many good things to life. Times like this, spending this time with you. This is awesome.
It's been an honor for me, I'll tell you.
To me, I'm just thrilled to death. special times with people, with your spouse or friends. I went to Myrtle Beach last week with, three of my best friends, and we just golfed and got stupid drunk, but we acted like frat boys again. Just, little moments. Those are the things that matter the most. It's not money. Overall, am I happy with my life? I'm fortunate. I have a wife of 35 years. I have 2 amazing kids. I have a wonderful daughter-in-law. I got nothing to complain about.
You're probably playing with Pro V1s too, aren't you?
I don't. But I did just get my first new set of clubs in my life. I've been playing golf since I was 6 years old. I just bought my first new set of clubs. Just got them last month.
What kind of game you got?
I got all the way down to about a 3 handicap for a while. Now I could shoot 78. I could shoot 94.
How about the distance?
Oh, well, I'm getting old.
Yeah.
I've lost at least 1 club length.
Yeah. What about short game, though? You making up for it with the short game, or?
I am. I gave up. I didn't play a lot of golf in all the years that I was broke, right? Couldn't afford that. I can't afford to go out playing golf when I got kids. So I spent a lot of years where I play 3-4 rounds a year. And that goes right up into this, last couple of years. Even I started playing a lot more and a bunch more last year. And this year, one of my good friends is retiring at the end of May. And he looks at me because you do know that's all we're doing is golfing. I'm like, I'm in. This is why I'm going to buy my first set of clubs. I'm going to go out and play more golf. And ironically, the first 9 holes I go out and play at Myrtle Beach, I pop a muscle in my forearm.
Oh, boy.
So I'm like, oh, great. I have 2 more rounds of which I'm paying a lot of money for. So I bought a brace and put it on and toughed it out. But, and I love my new clubs. But no, I don't play Titleist Pro Vs.
All right. So back to the question. You're telling me all the goods and bads about life. Put a number on it, 1 to 10.
On my life? I'm still alive. You got to be a 10.
Perfect answer. Perfect answer. When people give me any number less than 10, I'll go, well, what would make it a 10? And then, the counterpoint is, are you living in the present moment then? If you can't live your best life now because of something that hasn't happened yet, you see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So for me, it isn't even about the goal and making the goal. It's about having a goal and being on the mission toward the goal. That is where the joy is. That's why I'm always a 10.
So, you're spot on. The goal is not the celebration. It's the trip. It's always a trip. And so my friend Billy Dorsey said to me not long ago, he said, be patient in the moment. Be patient even in the now. And that has meant so much to me with this book, because this book keeps getting pushed back. I decided to write another chapter. I did the audio. I'm getting it in myself, so I'm getting that edited. Ebook, paperback, hardcover, all these things. I'll be honest with you, the easiest part about writing a book is writing the book. Publishing is much more challenging. And don't go to Amazon and publish yourself.
Too late.
You just shot yourself in the foot.
But my next book will be relevant, and I'm going to come to you and consult with you.
Yeah,
so.
If you self-publish on Amazon, you've shot yourself in the foot. Libraries won't touch you. Schools won't touch you. There's a whole world that won't touch you. And there's a good reason for that, is because typically it hasn't been proofread properly. It hasn't been edited properly. You haven't published it. You haven't marketed it. There's so many steps involved to do it right. And you want to do the first book the best, because every book after that comes easier. Right. So it's taking more time than I had hoped for, because I'm anxious to get out there. I'm anxious to start speaking for groups. I'm anxious to help the military and the Salvation Army and all these kids and whoever I can help. But I got to do it right, and that takes time.
Yep.
And that's when you have to learn to be patient in the now.
Yeah, there's a perfect tie-in.
Yeah.
Perfect finish. I love the mission, my friend. I'm grateful life brought us together. We're going to be doing something together for sure. Yeah. And I will put the title of the book in when we post the podcast. And then if you have a link you want to send people to, then...
Real easy. Go to BillHaase.com.
Okay.
And Haase is Haase. So BillHaase.com will bring you right to the pre-orders.
Awesome. Well, thank you, my friend, for being on the podcast. It was a great honor for me.
Oh, for me as well.
Thank you for joining us today on the Warrior Podcast, everybody. We'll see you at our next podcast. And remember, there's a warrior inside us all.